Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 81 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer alongside my guys John DeCani and Mike Szabo. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Cannot thank you all enough for making us a part of your Friday evening. Our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest album called Free Cake, which is out now. Play loud on the following platforms. Listen now on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, please be sure to download their newest hit song, Run Rudolph Run, which again is a Christmas song, but screw it. We're in February. Why not? Just download it if you can. That would really be awesome. So Black Cats NYC is, of course, our official sponsor. And of course, we do have with us here this evening the Essential Wrestling Podcast's very own John DeCani. JD, good to see you, sir. How are things on your side of the river?
Not bad at all. It's a lovely day here in Jersey, and so much fun to be along with you guys again. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Mike Szabo, good to have you along with us as well. And well, Mike, listen, I know you're having you're having some tough times making some bets and some predictions and stuff like that. Just make a damn bet, okay? Make something for Sunday, Mike.
Probably not. That's not going to happen. I've held out for this long. I think I'll make it another 2 days.
Oh, man.
Good to be on with you guys once again, as always, and for a fun show tonight.
Yeah, man, absolutely. There's no doubt. We've got a packed show with you, as always. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to our two guests, Mike Szabo and John DeCani, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be welcoming the managing editor of the Dolphins Wire, which is a part of USA Today's SMG Group, Mike Masala. He will be joining us to chat about the Miami Dolphins' new head coaching hire in Mike McDaniel. Is it a good hire or is it a terrible hire? And are the Dolphins heading down the toilet? We will get his reaction as well as, of course, all of ours as well later on. In addition to, as we get started here on episode number 81, we're going to be talking about Super Bowl 56, of course. The LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, going head-to-head out in SoFi Stadium, out in Los Angeles. Houston also hires Lovie Smith. We'll be talking about that. The New York Giants hire Wink Martindale as their new defensive coordinator. And, of course, JD will be making his pick tonight in his pursuit of the individual award for the Eastern Observer Survivor Pool, which seems like such a long time ago that all commenced. But now this is the final week because Ian Schraier and JD were unable to separate. And now they are together having 15-3, going 15-3 in the regular season. And then they also picked the exact same teams in the divisional tiebreaker, or in the playoff tiebreaker, excuse me. And we figured maybe, you know what? At some point, they might pick two different teams. They couldn't do it, but he will be making his pick later on. And we also have Ian's pick here. He is not with us tonight, but we do have his pick as well as his explanation to read to everyone as well. So we've got a good show for all of you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And also, of course, in the second hour, we'll be talking about St. John's and UConn, and, of course, Seton Hall, Villanova tomorrow. That's a big battle starting at 12 noon Eastern time down in Philadelphia. And then, of course, in the world of National Hockey League, Jack Eichel is making his return slowly but surely, but he cannot until the Vegas Golden Knights can clear off nearly $10 million in cap space. Who will be going? Both Mike and myself will be breaking that down. And, of course, our kudos to end the night off. Well, let's get things started here, fellas, with our Super Bowl 56 preview. And, of course, we got a chance to see the NFL honors, which, that was the start of the week, of course, for the Super Bowl week. We got a chance to see the Pro Football Hall of Fame honorees for the class of 2022. A really good start to Super Bowl week. But guys, let's get things started here with Super Bowl 56, and of course the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. And after our show last week, we were talking about, or rather 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how we didn't think that Cincinnati would even make it and potentially beat Kansas City. But listen, I mean, Mike, I got to start with you here. What we got a chance to see a couple of weeks ago, and now what we could be seeing on the world's biggest stage with Joe Burrow.
I mean, it's the Cinderella story. That's what this is. Nobody expected them to be here throughout the regular season, and they defied the odds in the playoffs. And they were down 18 against Kansas City on the road, down 18 at halftime, and then somehow Joe Burrow, that offense comes alive. The defense holds Patrick Mahomes just to those 3 points right at the end of regulation. I mean, it's just a fantastic performance by a quarterback in his second year being able to do what he does. I mean, we just haven't seen it.
It's really, it's insane. And the crazy part too, JD, is that offensive line is worse than trash.
Yeah. They got their quarterback destroyed last year, so he missed more than half the season. He comes back this year. He's one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league. He gets sacked 9 times in one playoff game just a few weeks prior to that. But they do just enough, and he's not a diva, so he doesn't, he's not one of those guys that he gets hit, and the minute he gets up, you can see him just glaring daggers at his line. He just gets up, shakes himself off, and says, okay, guys, we got it. Let's roll on to the next one. And, Kansas City is a team that had a lot of slow starts in the last 2 years when they went, won a Super Bowl, went to another one, and they would make adjustments at halftime and come out and blow people's doors off in the second half. The fact that Cincinnati was able to put together halftime adjustments, make their comeback, and hold Kansas City down, I mean, there's just, what is there not to love about this team? It's such a great story.
Yeah, it really is. And then you also look at Jamar Chase, of course, and we remember, and Mike, you and I, we've said this continuously over and over again with our guys, with Rob DeLuca and Ian Schraier, about how Jamar Chase, how that first round pick was ridiculed, really, and their general manager was really, they thought it was comical that they chose Joe Burrow's former LSU teammate in Jamar Chase, and then all of a sudden he's laughing all the way to the bank, and also he's laughing all the way to rookie records as well and breaking those records.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those who thought they should have chose a lineman, and shows how stupid that idea was. Clearly, at least they have some smarter people working in there in that office. Otherwise, they'd be, God knows where they would be right now if they would have gone with the lineman over Jamar Chase. I mean, just imagine the Miami Dolphins who would have had Chase, or further down, someone like the Eagles or someone like that. Imagine where they would be. So, I mean, it just shows how smart the Cincinnati was in making that pick, the relationship that was already built in there from college, and it's just lit up the NFL scene this year.
Yeah, it really is. And then, you're able to look at what Cincinnati has done also on the defensive side of the ball too, with just so many different weapons that they've got on the defensive side. I can't believe I'm saying this. You're going to be seeing 2 former New York Giants going head to head, and Eli Apple and Odell Beckham Jr. Mike, we got a chance to talk about that. And then also somebody, Trey Hendrickson, also a big defensive end too. He comes in and he broke the franchise record in sacks as well. I think it was 14.5 or 15.5 sacks. So he comes in, he makes Carlos Dunlap look like, well, long time ago, that was completely different generation. Now he comes in, big-bodied man, and he's one of the leaders on this defensive side of the ball. Fellas, I got to ask you this, looking at the LA Rams now, this whole offensive line also had some injuries down the stretch. Obviously, in the playoffs, they had lost Andrew Whitworth for a little bit. He was actually named one of the players of the year with the NFL honors. We'll get you the exact name in a few moments, but he was out for a few games, and Matthew Stafford just continued to really ball out. JD, how good is it to see Matthew Stafford get out of those Detroit Blues?
Yeah, it really is, because Stafford's a guy that I've liked, for his entire career, because when he was in Detroit, the team would play just bad enough where the Bears had a chance to actually beat them. But I would draft Stafford on my fantasy team almost every year, and he won me a lot of championships, and he just seems like a nice guy. It's a great story. And, when that trade was made, all of a sudden they went way to the top of the NFC Super Bowl odds. And, if it happens, wow, what a bow on a heck of a story. I mean, that team has traded its, so much of its future to win right now. Whether you're pulling for them or you're pulling for the Bengals, that's the good thing about this is Sunday night, we're not going to be sitting there going like, oh, Tom Brady won another one, or, oh my God, the the Dallas Cowboys and their insufferable fans won. I don't know anyone who's going to be really, really upset with the outcome here. There's no one hateable really in this scenario. So it's going to be a good story no matter who wins. Just looking forward to it so much.
That's the best way to put it, because again, just like a couple of years ago in 2020, when it was Mahomes and Garoppolo too, a lot of people wanted Mahomes to win his first ring. He did get it, obviously, but a lot of people did not want San Francisco to win its sixth championship in franchise history. And also especially on this side of the river too, I did hear a few folks say over and over again, well, Jimmy G, he's played under Tom Brady. I think has maybe a couple or one or two rings with New England when he was there. So he already has one. But now Mahomes has one, and now we're starting to see something else where, now Mahomes is not in it. Mahomes was playing in the Pro Bowl. Brady is gone and retired, no less, which no one would have thought that. And then now you've got Stafford and Burrow. It's so good to see, as JD brought up and what Mike said too. It's a Cinderella story of sorts for Cincinnati, because they weren't even supposed to be here. The LA Rams were, and I thought, and Mike was with us as well, in the preseason, I didn't think they were going to be there. I honestly thought it was the San Francisco 49ers. I had a lot of faith in them that they were going to be able to get over that hump, but they just could not do it. They couldn't get it done. But do we see the LA Rams potentially getting it done? I don't know. We'll get some thoughts in a few moments, but we spoke earlier about Andrew Whitworth. He was the Walter Payton Award winner this year. That's a big deal. And of course, Offensive Player of the Year, no doubt about it, Cooper Kupp. And then you also look, this is something too that, and then of course, Offensive Rookie of the Year was Jamar Chase. Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Burrow. No surprise there. Jamar Chase, Rookie of the Year. And then you also look at a Coach of the Year, which was Mike Vrabel, which we'll get to that in a few moments, because I thought that was complete BS in my opinion. But again, we don't vote on these, because if we did, I wouldn't have voted for him. Even though it was really good. He had a great season. He eventually faltered in the playoffs, and I know that all these awards are supposed to be on the regular season, but it's absolutely terrible. But shifting over to the awards before we head back to the Super Bowl, since we'll be talking about the Super Bowl pretty much for the first hour until our guest Mike Masala does come on. JD, I want to start with you here. Looking at some of these awards from Thursday night, Cooper Kupp, no surprise. TJ Watt, no surprise. What was the biggest one that stuck out to you? By looking at all of these? Joe Burrow, obviously Comeback Player of the Year. Andrew Beck, Salute to Service. Matthew Slater, Art Rooney Award, which Matthew Slater might not be coming back next year. That's a big deal too, for the Patriots. Justin Tucker, Clutch Performer. Dan Quinn, Assistant Coach of the Year, which is another big one for Giants fans, which he was supposed to, be roaming around the league, maybe be hired as the head coach for the Giants. Jonathan Taylor, Ground Player of the Year. Tom Brady, Air Player of the Year. A lot, like I said, a lot of good awards. And of course, Aaron Rodgers with MVP. What was the biggest one that stuck out to you, JD?
I wasn't surprised to see Rodgers win, but the fact that he got almost four times as many votes as Brady for MVP, when Brady had in every way statistically a better year than him. And I am no Tom Brady fan. But he threw for 5,300 yards. He threw for like 1,200 yards more than Rodgers. Yeah. And Rodgers had two or three more wins. Okay, they were the number one seed. I know that goes a long way. Yep. But to see what Brady did at 43, 44 years old, I almost expected him to win it. And the fact that, like I said, Rodgers got almost 40 votes. Brady got 10. Cooper Kupp got 1. But that to me was a little bit surprising. But I didn't think anything stuck out so much that it was, burn the place down. They don't know what they're doing there. So.
Yeah, no, and I think the big, I'll be honest here, fellas. The big one to me was Mike Vrabel winning Coach of the Year. I think, when you and I think if there was any award that stuck out, it was definitely that one, because when you look at what what this overachieving Cincinnati Bengals team did this regular season. They weren't even supposed to be winning the AFC North. They weren't even supposed to sniff a winning record. They weren't even supposed to sniff 9 or 10 wins. They weren't supposed to do that. And now they're in the Super Bowl. But it doesn't even matter because we look back, way back in 2007 when the New York Giants won the Super Bowl at 9-7. We know that, okay? They're the first team to win the Super Bowl at 9-7, and I think is the 6th seed, right, Mike? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, they did it twice.
Exactly. So, never say never with all of that stuff. But the best part is that, they had a phenomenal regular season. I mean, again, you look at what Cincinnati has been able to do this year, and they were 10-7. They were 10-7. They were not supposed to sniff even, I think it was like 7 or 8 wins. And then they got 10.
Yeah,
so
the Browns were supposed to be better. The Ravens were supposed to be better. Everybody expected that. And then all of a sudden, Cincinnati comes out of nowhere.
That's what I'm saying, and then when you have something along those lines where these teams are really showing out, they're balling out, and they're putting up big time numbers, and they're doing it on offense, and they're making not only games watchable. This is not the reason, why that they were, that these teams are voted on for, respective player or teams of the year, but it's the performance. Also, we're seeing these wins. They're supposed to be doing that, and the head coach also, in Zach Taylor, in my opinion, was supposed to be or should have been the coach of the year. Also, we got a chance to see comeback player of the year being in Joe Burrow. Of course, there were some, I thought maybe rumbles with Dak Prescott. And I think also Rob DeLuca thought that Dak Prescott was going to just win it right away. I don't know if that was the case. I'd love to get his thought on that, but I do believe he did have Dak Prescott winning that award and saying just because they're America's team, that's how he would have won. But I don't think that was not the case. And obviously Joe Burrow, he did come away with that. Mike, for you, was there any award that stuck out for you that was eye-popping?
I totally agreed with you on the coach of the year, really. I think it's the Tennessee never really looked the part of a 1 seed this year. Like, I get Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel did a good job there, and they had a really good year this regular season, but it just never like it never was like they flew. I don't know how as a number 1 seed you fly under the radar, but somehow the Titans figured out how to. Like, Derrick Henry got hurt. There never really was too many games where they really were like, oh my God, that's a 1 seed. That's a team that can run the table. They never really looked the part. Ryan Tannehill goes through phases where he throws pick after pick, and he certainly did it to sink the Titans' season against the Bengals. But it just never really felt, it's like you saw they were a 1 seed, and it's like, okay, you got the record, but it was like, huh, really?
Yeah.
So, and the fact that I get, again, it's the regular season it's supposed to mean, but it's supposed to take into effect more to the regular season, these honors. But literally, your coach of the year got beat by someone who's supposed to be also a fellow coach of the year candidate in Zach Taylor, and I don't know how Vrabel still gets it. So that just boggles my mind. That's honestly the first that I heard of the awards, of that part of the awards, when you just mentioned it now, and I'm like, what, really? Like, Zach Taylor should have got that. That's one that really blows my mind. I think everything else was, not surprising. I get Brady. I think Brady should have been closer to the MVP, but I think everything else was not surprising at all.
Yeah, I think another one too that that a lot of people kind of forgot, and we remember talking about at one point, Jonathan Taylor. If the Colts did not implode, there might have been some talk about Jonathan Taylor maybe getting some votes for the MVP. Yeah. Could have been. It very well could have been, JD.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the weird thing is the MVP is such a quarterback award. Mm-hmm. You just have to have an insane season at running back or wide receiver to get anywhere near that award. So you go down to offensive player of the year and you see Cooper Kupp got 35 first place votes and Taylor got 10. I thought that would be a little bit closer because, quite frankly, what Taylor was doing until that terrible last game of the season was really, really impressive in a league where running backs have become kind of forgotten he was carrying that team in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really crazy to see that. But I mean, like I said, he did win Ground Player of the Year, so at least he got a award. But not the one that obviously a lot of people were thinking about that he would win. But ladies and gentlemen, going back to the Super Bowl, though, now we want to talk about the LA Rams side of things. And of course, we got a chance to talk about just a few moments ago the Walter Payton Man of the Year award in Andrew Whitworth, who met with the media a few days ago on Radio Row regarding if this would be his swan song if he did win, and if he would ride out into the sunset. And, all he said was that there's nothing more that he would need. So, which means most likely if he wins, he's done. I believe he's about 39, 40 years old. So it is his time once, and especially he is still one of the best left tackles in the NFL as well. And really has been doing a phenomenal job protecting the blind side of now, obviously, in Matthew Stafford, but just prior, of course, in Jared Goff too. And he was a big part of the Super Bowl 53 run, which unfortunately they fell flat on their face with because of Todd Gurley. But we digress there, Rams fans. That's for sure. I'm sure you don't want to hear about that. But some insights also regarding some, some of the offensive threats here, guys. And I think the biggest one here, obviously, Cooper Kupp against Jamar Chase. It's a big deal. But obviously the Rams have a lot more depth when it comes to the wide receiver position. But I think this will be a fun battle to see what goes on here. Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey. And then also you've got Cooper Kupp, and who knows who will be on the other side. Mike, start with you here. Cooper Kupp or Jamar Chase? Who would you rather? I mean, it's not even who would you rather, but how good of a wide receiver one battle is this for both sides?
I mean, it's a fantastic battle on both sides there. It's no doubt about it. I think it's fantastic matchups too. Just with on the Chase side of it, you'll get to see Chase and Ramsey probably for most of the game. He'll probably move around, not try and put Chase on an island to move around, but I would guess a huge majority of the snaps will be on Chase. And I think it should be really intriguing. I think both will put up really good numbers. I don't think you can really stop Cooper Kupp completely, nor do I think any coach is really scheming for that, because if you are, you're going to lose. You're just trying to limit everybody else. I think I think the same. It will be the same with Chase. I don't think Jalen Ramsey's going to be able to lock him down completely. I think they're going to put up some solid numbers, probably 80 to 100 yards, maybe for each of them.
Yeah. Now, how big of a loss, JD, is Tyler Higbee for this Rams team? Because that was just announced early on that he was put onto the injured reserve with a knee.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams have plenty of targets, so it's not like losing Higbee is going to destroy them. But that to have that tight end when even your slot receiver, where Kupp runs a lot of his routes out of the slot, when even your slot receiver is a deep downfield threat, you need that tight end to run those underneath routes. So it's going to be noticeable. You're going to see some guy catch a pass at some point. He's going to catch a dump off, and you're going to say, "Who in God's name is that?" Because it's not their number one or their number two tight end. So it's going to be noticeable.
Yeah, this is definitely something to see. They're not technically home, but they are home. I want to know also, fellas, if what we think maybe are they going to be utilizing their own locker room? Or is the NFL going to allow that? I don't think so, guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think they probably will. I mean, I don't know how the setup was for Tampa Bay last year, but I think the fact they're hosting it, it's the second straight year. Maybe the NFL will just have that normal operation there.
If they do allow them to use their own locker room, it'll probably be a function of the fact that there are 3 locker rooms there, because the Chargers have to have their own locker room, and it has to be a quote unquote home worthy locker room. So maybe they give that to Cincinnati so that the Rams don't have to clear out their regular season locker room.
So it's very funny that, we bring this up here, and DeLuca is here with us. And, really the big thing is DeLuca, if you're commenting, why aren't you making an appearance? I get it's game day, but you can log on from your phone. Unacceptable. DeLuca, Rob DeLuca says for all of our audio listeners, says, quote, it's a locker room with 4 little periods. Well, that's very funny because, and then he says Rams and Rams, Bengals and Chargers. But think about it, right? Now, people say, many people say, the way that the alternate goes, right, or the way that I guess the conference hosts, right? So last year, right, it was, and I guess that's why they're not making a big deal about it this year, because technically the Chargers are hosting the Super Bowl, right? The AFC is hosting the Super Bowl, right? Last year the NFC was hosting the Super Bowl, so now Tampa Bay was able to utilize locker rooms or whatever. But the reason why we bring this up here, ladies and gentlemen, is because of a potential home field advantage, right? The way that the NFL wants to do it, or how they've always wanted to do it, is it's almost a neutral site where there's no advantage. The only advantage is for both teams that they're playing in a warm environment. That's pretty much what it's been for the last 56 years, with the exception of just 1 year when it was here in New Jersey. But again, though, like DeLuca says, this no such thing in SoFi in terms of a home field advantage. Yeah. We know about your home field advantages. We get it. Okay, we get all of that. Stop it. All right, it's game day, DeLuca. Please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. But it's definitely something to think about too, where you would think that, again, you're in Los Angeles. The Rams fans have really built a foundation once again there, because we remember many years ago when they went to the Super Bowl the first time, they really did not have many fans in the playoff rounds over at the LA Coliseum. They were outnumbered like 10-1 for visiting fans. And it was worse over in Compton, California, or in Englewood, excuse me, where the Chargers were playing for a while. So it all depends on how these fans show out, and obviously the prices are through the roof. But fellas, what do we see here? Will there be any advantage for either team? Start off with you, JD.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is cliche that you always hear. They get to sleep in their own bed. But yeah, it's LA, which is a hectic city anyway. So maybe, knowing the lay of the land and whatnot, it's got to be somewhat of an advantage. And yes, there may be a little added aggravation that you have a lot of people who may be hitting you up for tickets. So maybe you've even got more family crawling out of the woodwork, but you sleep in your own bed, the stadium, the route, the procedure. That's got to be at least a little bit of an advantage.
Right now, and to think also, once you hear those things, sometimes maybe you might say to yourself, well, okay, if you're the Bengals, how do you go into it, Mike, saying that we've got an advantage just because, well, we were able to pick our uniforms for starters? And that's another thing too. How many teams have been wearing white have won the last the last 17 Super Bowls? 14 of those 17 teams have worn white, and they've won.
Goodness, they're really going down into the weeds of.
Oh yeah, those are called NFL insights, my man. NFL insights. 14 of the last 17 Super Bowls have been won wearing a white uniform.
And it's confirmed they're wearing white.
Listen, the Bengals are wearing their dark uniform. They had the choice too.
Well, they did beat Kansas City last week in it, no?
No, they were wearing their whites, I believe.
Oh, so I'm not going to get into that superstition. But I don't know how much of a great advantage of it is. I mean, there's some, like the Rams will be playing in their home stadium. That's fuel. There's motivation for that. But, I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals just took down Kansas City in Arrowhead. I mean, that's as hostile of an environment as you can get in the NFL. So I think it'll balance out.
Now, fellas, the next thing here, obviously, when it comes to the Super Bowl 56, of course, comes to a few of the bets too, and of course, there are plenty of wagers that DraftKings has. I'll say this flat out, that you've already put a couple of dollars down with. But I mean, it's something that, I really, let's see, they actually have, ever since sports betting became legal here in New York. A lot of people have said, well, maybe you should call that Hope NY number, Joe, just because, you're doing a lot. And I think Mike might have been one of them, off camera, of course, in our little group message here. And of course, fellas, the big thing here, obviously, are some of the novelty bets, the prop bets that everyone has a fun time with, and Super Bowls are always about, who wins the coin toss, who's going to be the first to score, how long will the national anthem be, what jersey number will be the first to score? Is it over 25.5? Is it under 25.5? Is it a rushing touchdown by a quarterback? Who could it be? There's so many different numbers, different odds. And again, a lot of people are very used to Super Bowl boxes and stuff like that. But now that sports betting is legal here in the state of New York, and of course, where JD is in New Jersey, he's been able to do it for a while. And then there's also coin toss winner. There's, coin toss and win the game. And of course, will there be an octopus? And for those that don't know what an octopus is, of course, player scoring a touchdown, and then on the 2-point conversion, will they get the exact same thing? That's something that you normally don't see a lot either. I mean, again, I know that Mike Zabo doesn't really do many bets, but I got to ask the two of you here, just friendly, just friendly throwing it out there. Is it going to be heads or tails to start this off on Super Bowl 56?
Tails never fails.
Exactly right. You just beat me to it.
Tails never fails. That's pretty good. Oh man, yeah. There are so many good bets here, and again, please, of course, ladies and gentlemen out there, bet responsibly. There are plenty of good ones here, and just right now, you look at the LA Rams, the spread, they're giving 4, -4 on the board. Of course, the over under is 48.5. And right now, of course, it looks pretty good. And of course, there's some same game parlays that you can do as well. Guys, the next thing I want to talk about here when it comes to the Super Bowl, of course, is really our predictions, because that's the part where we're going to be at now. And, now that we've got to the opening odds, we've got the bets, we've got, we're going to have tons of good food and whatnot. Now we got to get to some of the predictions. And of course, now the Super Bowl 56 predictions will finish off the Eastern Observer Survivor Pool. And now that also means that John DeConnie will be making his pick live on air as well. So, for all of those that are just joining us for the first time today and do not know about our Eastern Observer Pool, of course, the Essential Wrestling Podcast crew, which is, of course, John DeConnie is a part of, Mike Zabo and myself are a part of the Primetime Rundown crew. The wrestling guys won the Eastern Observer Pool, which, again, due to some supply chain issues, will not be getting their trophy for a little while. But they're also waiting. We're actually still waiting, of course, for our individual award trophy. So both JD and Ian Schraier both went 15-3 in the regular season, and of course now have gone 3-0 throughout this playoff round, or this playoff season. So with that being said, now we had to get a little creative, both Rob DeLuca and myself. So of course, we immediately scrapped the two teams that they selected, and both JD and Ian both selected Cincinnati in the wild card weekend, and of course selected the LA Rams in I believe it was 2 weeks ago. Last week. It was in the championship round. They selected the LA Rams. So now that will be all erased, and they will be starting from scratch. Now, they will also be picking the winner of Cincinnati and Los Angeles. And of course, they will be betting not betting, but they will be predicting the score in addition to a potential spread, if you will. So, of course, right now, we'll see if, just throwing a number out there for Ian. We'll give him actually a quick limelight here, if you will, and then we're going to save the best for last, being in John DeConnie today, because he's with us. Let me just pull up this text message from Ian, but I can tell you though what he did pick, or rather who he picked. It was it was the Los Angeles Rams. He did pick that, I can tell you. And now let's get this before. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Let us find this here. And here we go. So Ian Schraier selects the Los Angeles Rams by a score of 27-21, and they will cover that -4 spread. So, JD, the spread is -4. What is your prediction and also the score?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the Rams, which no surprise. I would have been just as fine going with Cincinnati because I just think this game's going to be so good. These playoffs have been amazing, and I think we're going to get – there's no reason to believe, unless somebody major gets injured, there's no reason to believe we're not going to get another thriller. So I've got the Rams winning late 31-30 in a thriller.
31-30. Okay. So we've got 27-21, Los Angeles Rams, Ian Schraier, and 31-30, JD. So now, with that being said, of course, the closest one to that score will win the individual award. That's a big deal. Mike Szabo, for you, just because we normally do our predictions here anyway, Super Bowl 56, who do you got?
Well, we talked about some of it before. I really like both teams in this, the story of Cincinnati and Joe Burrow and how they're coming up. The Rams I've liked for the last couple of years with that incredible defense that they've built, led by Aaron Donald and then Jalen Ramsey. Stafford coming over and just his story. Can he finally prove to everybody that he's that big-time quarterback that was tucked away in the doldrums of Detroit? And he's just, one more game away from just solidifying a legacy and completing a great story there. My head tells me the Rams, but Joey, give me a who day, and I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals to complete the Cinderella story. We're going to have a thriller, and it's going to come down to a rookie Evan McPherson game-winning kick as time expires, 24-21. The Cincinnati Bengals take it home.
Well, it's very funny. It's very funny that you bring that up because my uncle, who was watching a few moments ago, he says 26-22 Cincinnati. McVay and Stafford implode in the fourth quarter. Well, because of a viewer comment, ladies and gentlemen, JD, do you agree with that? Obviously not, because you chose the LA Rams. Do you see McVay and Stafford imploding in the fourth and maybe keep it, obviously, like how you said, 31-30 would be your score. Do you see a potential implosion down the stretch?
It's always possible with Matt Stafford, but I think the fact that he got the monkey off of his back, that he got to the playoffs, he got his first win. Then he beats Tom Brady. Now he's in the Super Bowl. It's almost as if he has nothing left to prove. Yes, obviously the Super Bowl championship is the cherry on the whipped cream. It's one of the things that all quarterbacks are eventually judged by when you start talking about Hall of Fame and whatnot, and everyone's place in the pecking order. So I just think he's been playing so well. I wouldn't be shocked to see him do something silly, maybe a little bit early, with the nerves, or he overthrows a pass and gets an early pick or something like that. But I think he calms down. I think he's and also the fact in McVay's case that they've been here once before and everything went about as wrong as it possibly could have in that game. I think that clears the nerves out for McVay as well. That's why I've got the Rams completing the Cinderella story. They've, they don't have another first round pick until, my 7-year-old niece will be driving a car. They kind of have to win. This is what it's all about. They did everything to win right now. It's all right there in front of them. And I kind of feel, obviously, Cincinnati, good things are coming for Cincinnati. Cincinnati has, a whole new outlook. They've got so many young weapons. They've got this quarterback that is just as cool as can be. I get a feeling that this game is going to be kind of like the 84 Stanley Cup playoffs, the Stanley Cup finals, where, the young upstart Oilers at the end of the game, they were showered, they were done. They're going to do their, media row or whatever. And they pass by the locker room of the champion Islanders. and they expect to see champagne flying all over the place and all these guys hooting and hollering. And what they see are a bunch of old men with bags of ice on their necks and their knees and their backs. And they left everything out on the ice. And I think there's enough veterans on this Rams team, especially on the defense, that they're going to leave everything out on the field. And, they say defense wins championships. We don't tend to see dominant defenses like your 85 Bears or your 2000 Ravens, but I think it's going to come down to a play being made, and I think the Rams and that all-star defense are going to be the ones to make that play in this game.
See now, and you bring up the 85 Bears obviously in that sentence. Guys, I want to, I want to ask that question now is that do we think that this Rams defense is special?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think in terms of ranking all time with those units like the 85 Bears and whatnot. I don't think they're better than those or whatnot, but they're not too far off. I mean, you got an incredible defensive line, including this year's acquisitions. You added Von Miller in there too. The secondary is really good. Jalen Ramsey's your lockdown corner, and there are not too many holes in which to really exploit there.
Yeah, and also you also had Eric Weddle come out of retirement too because they had some safety issues too, and that's a big thing too, ladies and gentlemen. Is that JD? You've got I think we had brought up a few times with the LA Rams that they really don't have any depth either. Do you think that maybe this team could be up there with the 85 Rams or the 85 Bears and potentially other stout defenses?
Well, you do have. With the Rams, you have a game-breaking singular player. You've got a lockdown corner, and you've got an absolute game wrecker in Donald.
Yep.
Whereas the Bears, I mean, all the names now, but, Mike Singletary wasn't setting sack records on the 85 Bears. They did that as a unit. It was the 46 defense. It was the fact that every time you snapped the ball against that defense, the quarterback knew that unless you had the millisecond release of Dan Marino, you were going to be in trouble before you hit the third step in your drop. So it was just it was mayhem across the the offensive and defensive line there. So I don't know that this Rams team has the names, it has the reputation. They don't always play that way, but they've been more consistent later in the season. There was times early in the season where there was a game where I was like, oh, the Rams are going against a rookie quarterback. This is going to be a 42-3 game. And it didn't turn out that way because there were games where the Rams defense just didn't play like you expected them to. But I think that like I said, they've gotten better as the season has gone on. And, even Aaron Donald can either wreck the game on his own by making all the plays or draw so much attention to make sure he doesn't, that, someone on the other end is going to make that play. But this defense is too good. And that conversely, that Cincinnati offensive line is too inconsistent. I think that something's got to give. And I think it's going to be that offensive line.
Give me the LA Rams winning 38-27.
Wow.
Give me the over on that. 38-27. Listen, the over-under right now in this game is 48.5. I think, and you know what? I'm with JD here. I just think that, on both sides of the ball, they're too powerful. And the problem that I have with Cincinnati, both to Mike and to my uncle's point here is that their offensive line is just too much. They're too inconsistent. Yes, they've been doing well, but I think Joe Burrow has really improved his play down the stretch. It's all great, but I don't think that he has gotten to go up against a player as JD said, a game wrecker and a game changer in Aaron Donald. This playoff run, I can't think of one.
No,
I really can't think of one.
No, but I think he's gone up against good units, not really a good individual. I mean, the Titans had a really good pass rush this year. The Chiefs have one or two players on that defensive front in that front seven that are pretty good. You think of Chris Jones, you think of Frank Thomas. So he's gone up against good units, but Listen, nobody, and there are not a lot of people who go up against someone like Aaron Donald on a consistent basis. I mean, that's just how things roll. I mean, he's just that good of a player. My only counterpoint to that is we've been constantly harping on the Cincinnati offensive line and their deficiencies, but for like 3 weeks, but yet they're still here. They've gone all this way somehow, and yet you have that extra week to prepare. If I heard this term on all the radio shows for people picking Cincinnati, were saying, listen, if all of us, I think someone said it perfectly. I forget who it was, but they said it perfectly. They're like, if all of us who are sitting at home and just objectively watching sports and analyzing this and all know that the Cincinnati Bengals are that bad on the offensive line, don't you think the coaching staff knows that they're that bad and they'll scheme against it? And they have an extra week to do so compared to the rest of the playoff rounds. So they have an extra week to prepare for all of that. We've seen them throughout the playoffs. The Bengals have continuously found a way somehow, some way to overcome all those deficiencies and get to this point. I don't think it's that crazy that they can do it just one more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude our Super Bowl preview. The next thing that we're going to go to, there's been some hires. The coaching staffs, or rather the head coaching roles for all 32 teams have been officially filled. And we've got Houston. We also have Miami. And we also have the New York Football Giants. They have hired not only their head coach in Brian Daboll, but they also hired their defensive coordinator in Don or Wink Martindale as their new defensive coordinator. So because we are here in the great state of New York as well as New Jersey, the next thing I got to bring up here is Wink Martindale. And Mike, for you, you're a Giants fan. This defensive coordinator position was originally supposed to be, held down by Patrick Graham if he was not hired out in Las Vegas. And that's a big deal because originally he was getting a lot of traction, or there was some traction about him getting a head coaching job somewhere. He was that good, but instead he goes to Las Vegas with the same exact title. What was the reason for him going out there as opposed to staying here in New Jersey?
I'm not too sure, because I guess it's that the Raiders are just in a better spot. You maybe like that job a little better. The fact that the comfort level too, that you'd be going into a new staff rather than having to readjust to a new coaching staff besides yourself with the New York Giants. I think the Giants could have handled the situation a little bit better, because obviously they were going to let him go if he was going to go to a job that's, a head coaching job. But it's kind of strange. You don't usually see a team that wants to retain their defensive coordinator like the Giants wanted to do with Graham, and then afterward allowed him to be interviewed for a lateral job somewhere else. You don't really see that often, and yet that's exactly what happened. So that's kind of dumbfounded me. Like, why would they even let him interview somewhere else for a defensive coordinator job? Different story if it would be for a head coaching job. But hey, if he wants to go, you're not going to keep him around here and have him be miserable and just try and coach your team. That's not going to help anybody out. So if he wants to go, might as well go. And they made a great hire, a great replacement in there in Wink Martindale, experienced guy. Had a lot of good years as the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator, some good defenses. Kind of looked bad this year, where he got fired because there were a lot of injuries on the Ravens defense. So it kind of was a down year overall. They missed the playoffs, so that's why he was out of a job. But he's experienced. He's got a good defense. He's well regarded around the league. A lot of players say he's the best coordinator I've ever had. So I think the Giants did really good building out their staff. It just remains to be seen if they can put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something too where, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, they hired a lot of guys, such as also Mike Kafka too, to really try and develop Daniel Jones because of the Dave Gettleman disaster that he did in terms of drafting these players that, really they're supposed to be in order. And obviously, a lot of people they draft, sometimes from the outside in, but then a lot of winning teams, they draft from the inside out. And obviously, when you look at teams like, for instance, like the New York Giants, where Dave Gettleman was really not focused on a massive need in the offensive line, and it showed through many years. So he went to Daniel Jones, he went to Saquon Barkley, and there's many talk, of course, lots of talk rather, where you get to hear, of course, our good friends in Ian Schraier and Rob DeLuca continuously battle, of course, about who should they have drafted a couple of years ago? Should it have been Quentin Nelson? Should it have been Saquon Barkley? Who knows now? And obviously, you'll never know. And to see also with Saquon Barkley, who I believe could potentially be a cap casualty, which I don't think that's going to happen now. There is a lot of pieces with, again, I think they're in $3 million over the cap. Heading into next year, which means that they have to do a lot of adjusting, which makes Joe Shane's job a lot harder. But there's also some room for potential improvement on the defensive side. And JD, when you look at the Giants defense, they let up so many touchdowns, they let up so many field goals, whatever it was, they were torched on the defensive side. But when you really look at what they did, though, fundamentally, they really looked like a top unit when they played consistent and they played well.
Yeah, they filled a lot of holes with a lot of names that they don't have a lot of name recognition, but they have a lot of solid players on that team. And bringing in Martindale, like Mike said, he is very well regarded. I'm worried a little bit because I am, secondarily a Giants fan.
Yeah.
Last year, he was the linebackers coach for the Ravens for a little while. Then he became the defensive coordinator. Last year, they had an overall a pretty decent defense. I think they were in top 10, maybe even, right around 5-6 in terms of overall defense.
Yeah.
They were number 1 against the run, but they were dead last against the pass. And that really scares me because the last time that Martindale was a defensive coordinator in 2010 in Denver, they also had one of the worst defenses in the league. They were in a rebuilding process, but I worry about the Giants, but they do have 2 very high draft picks to play with. They should be able to get at least 1, if not 2, really nice pieces for that defense. So things are looking up, and I think Shane and Dable, obviously that's the Buffalo double dip that I wanted to see go to Chicago because they've already shown that they can, take a young, big quarterback and, develop him. But there they are in New Jersey. So God love them and good luck to them. It's all about the draft. You put the right pieces in place and this team can make it turn around pretty quick.
Yeah. It's to me though, when you look at what Wink Martindale's history was all about is that, in order for him to succeed, he's got to have the correct personnel. And that's a scary thing too, is that when you have certain guys that are not really your guys that, I don't want to say hand select, but that really fit your scheme. If you don't have that, you better watch out. Mike, obviously, you were pretty happy about that, but where's Vic Fangio?
Well, that's what was my first choice, honestly. I'm okay with Martindale because of his experience and whatnot, but my first choice was Vic Fangio. Like, you look at the rest of the staff, like Dable's an experienced coach, but not an experienced head coach. Mike Kafka's never been an offensive coordinator before, although he's been around the game.
Eagles legend, Mike Kafka.
Yeah,
Go on.
You needed to get an experienced name at defensive coordinator one way or another. You had 3 stellar names. Martindale, you had your old buddy Joey Jim Schwartz in there, and then Vic Fangio. And it's like, it should have been a no-brainer for Vic Fangio. I mean, he's been doing a fantastic job over in Denver. I think someone had an interview with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and they both said that the hardest defense to scheme against was Vic Fangio's. And he consistently has top 10 units every year, so why wouldn't you go after him? But they decided to go with Martindale. I think it's a decent option, not the best, but I think they'll do a solid job. And I think in terms of like personnel and trying to adjust, to not having your own guys. I think he might soon enough have his own guys because we talk about the maneuverability on the cap that the Giants are going to have to do to be able to sign their draft picks when the draft comes around.
Yeah.
Most of the cap casualties are going to, you just look at the payroll and how the Giants may want to operate. Most of the cap casualties will probably be on the defensive side of the ball. So he'll have some option to really maneuver and get some pieces in the draft or free agency that he likes on the defensive end. So.
And it's a perfect segue into something that we just spoke about, JD, obviously with the, Wink Martindale really operates really at a high level with his own guys, or when his personnel, when these players can play his game. Now you look at the upcoming free or the current free agents for the Baltimore Ravens, and you look at some of the names here like Brandon Williams, Calais Campbell, Jimmy Smith, Justin Houston, Pernell McPhee. A big five, if you will, that could potentially be on their way out. Is there a name there, if you're a Giants fan, and I'll get to Mike with this question in a few moments, is there a name there that you might like to see in New Jersey playing for Wink Martindale next year out of those five mentioned?
Right off the top of my head, I would say Calais Campbell, but once again, they do have a high draft pick, and you might be able to fill that position with a young stud coming out of college. So, but Pernell McPhee is not a name I would ever, shake a stick at either. So, yeah, I think any of those guys that you mentioned would definitely come and contribute to the Giants. So, guys love to go play for their, a coach that they love once he leaves. So, you could see the Giants plugging in a couple of holes with former Ravens.
Now, Mike, for you, obviously, with, again, plenty of holes to fill for the Giants, do you agree with JD where they might go down the draft route for the defensive side of the ball, or maybe do they get a Calais Campbell to go next to a big cat, a Leonard Williams?
I think most of their draft picks will probably, the later rounds will probably be on the defensive end. I think at 5 or 7, no particular order, but at 5 and 7, they'll probably go offensive line and edge rusher at either one of those picks. I think just what the mock drafts are coming out with and how the draft is shaking up, that's how it'll go. And then probably their second round picks, they'll go a second and third. They'll probably go more defensive. I think they could look at some of those former Ravens. I have a feeling if there's a free agent cornerback that Martindale is familiar with, they may go after him, because you think about James Bradbury and the amount of money that he could potentially be a cap casualty, even though I don't want that to happen because the cornerback department is pretty weak for the Giants as it is. If you get rid of Bradbury, it's pretty bad. But
Dory Jackson, Logan Ryan, yeah. And Logan shipped it over to safety, yeah.
Dory Jackson, Logan Ryan, those guys, those aren't your main cornerbacks. They're good complementary pieces to Bradbury in a depth chart. But if Bradbury's gone, it's taking an already big part that you have to improve on the defense to making it an even greater need, along with the fact they need a better pass rush. So they may have to because of cap, but wouldn't be great, but probably you could see a cornerback or two added because of that.
So we do have Mike Masala backstage, and we're going to get him in just 1 second. We do have 1 minute to go before we do get him in, and I do want to just do a quick rapid fire here with Houston. They hired Lovie Smith, and we got a chance to see obviously where Houston was. Let's just we don't even have to elaborate. Straight garbage. But Tyrod Taylor really did well at times. Houston's got so many plugs to fill. Rapid fire here, JD. Was it a good hire for Lovie Smith, or should they have gotten somewhere else?
You're never going to get me to say a bad thing about Lovie Smith.
Yeah, biased.
Took my Bears to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as his quarterback. So
legend.
He's obviously a qualified head coach, but I feel like it was a lazy hire because he was their defensive coordinator, and they really didn't even talk to him about the head coaching job until they were a week plus into the hunt, and they just kind of like came back around to him. So I feel like he's a place filler because they still don't know what's going on with their franchise quarterback. Is he going to be traded? Is he going to be suspended? Is he going to be arrested? That franchise is a mess. So I feel like he's the guy that they plug him in for 1 year. If everything shakes out at the end of the year, I feel like they can just go, we just fire him and start over. And that'll be a shame for Lovey, but it's kind of the feeling I get down there.
I really feel bad for Houston. But Mike, for you, rapid fire, what do you got with?
Yeah, I totally agree with what John just said. I think it was not really a well planned out hire. I think it was a not so well kept secret that Houston really wanted Josh McCown to be their coach at first. And then Brian Flores, of course, basically came off the table because of this whole lawsuit that came out. And I think they kind of pivoted to say, okay, there's not that many candidates. All right, Lovie Smith was a name. He's been there before, done coaching and whatnot. You haven't really talked to him that much, but hey, he's in our house, and why not? I think that's what basically they said.
Yeah, well, you know what? Obviously we talk about these wacky hires. We talk about a lot of craziness within an organization. And of course, we've got somebody else that comes on here regarding a lot of, we got to take that off here. We'll get a brand new graphic up in a few moments. But ladies and gentlemen, of course, we are extremely happy to welcome with us here Mike Masala. Mike, managing editor of the Dolphins Wire, part of USA Today's SMG Group. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here with us, man. How are things down on your side of the country?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been an exciting few days with how quickly things have happened after what seemed like an eternity of waiting for a head coaching hire. And now there's news. It seems like every hour, different assistant coach is being either hired or let go, hired somebody somewhere else. But from the feeling I'm getting from a lot of Dolphins fans is people are excited, and I can see why. Mike McDaniel, coming from that Kyle Shanahan tree, is some promising prospect of a head coach, but I think some people are still nervous at the same time. So it's cautious optimism, I would say.
It's really tough, especially when, you could have another coach coming in here and potentially in a year, Stephen Ross is offering him $200,000 to take a loss. Mike, and all joking aside though, and obviously you're covering all of this, and this is just wild stuff that you're seeing. And, I'm a part of the media. Mike is a part of the media also. And this is stuff that I did not ever think that I would ever hear. And this is the integrity of the game now that we're talking about here.
Yeah, this is a real issue, and we heard the integrity of the game being thrown around a lot during the Deflategate saga up in New England.
Yeah,
and this is an issue that should be handled just as big, if not bigger than that, because we're talking about paying to lose games, and Brian Flores has said that he didn't do that, and obviously them winning the games down the stretch in the 2019 season kind of proves that point, but if you're paying a team to lose games, if you are that is affecting the players, that is affecting the fans, that is affecting bettors, which we now know the NFL is so high on, that is cause for potential loss of ownership, and there's a chance that this gets real dirty if the allegations are true from Brian Flores, and from what their lawyers are saying, they have witnesses and evidence to support it. So things could get even crazier in Miami in the coming weeks and months.
Unbelievable stuff. And you know what? And it's funny because we actually have, first off, we've got two mics on here with you. So we got to make sure that we, get that squared away. But the big thing also is that Mike Szabo, we didn't have this on our instant reaction show. We normally would. And I don't know why. I think it was just so jaw dropping to see all of this. Now, Mike Masala, I got to ask you this question. And before we get to my guys on the right side of the screen here, for Mike McDaniel, another Mike, of course, for this whole saga and for everything like that, what are your early thoughts of, what's going on in his head? And I mean, how do you take this job without so much distraction from not only local Miami media, from national media now that they're going to be swarming in to South Florida?
Yeah, from everything he's said so far, he's handled it probably the way that Miami wants him to. He's been nothing but complimentary of the organization, the fan base, and the owner. Um, and what he said is he's wasn't really turned off by the allegations that Brian Flores made, which is a little shocking because that would make sense to probably most everybody to have that play out in your head. Is this guy going to get in the way of me doing my job or trying to win games and become a Hall of Fame coach like he said he wanted to on his resume back in 2005 as an intern? So I think he was really just excited to get an opportunity. And obviously it's fresh, and I'm sure Stephen Ross is on his best behavior right now, so we may not be getting the most real version of Stephen Ross or Chris Greer or anybody in the organization at this point. But I think McDaniel is excited, and that kind of shows. So I understand the idea that he's going into this with an optimistic lens, but he should definitely be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's, not only you have to be careful, but then again, again, the season, you go about another, I think it's what, 2.5, 3 months until you've got OTAs as well, and these players are going to be, getting back out there. The draft is in 2.5 months. You've got that, and then you also have the big question mark about, is Tua Tagovailoa, is he the franchise? Was it Deshaun Watson? What, obviously that's not going to happen anymore since Brian Flores is not there anymore. We have no idea. They put in so much money into the cornerback room. They put so much money on the defensive side last year. It didn't follow through. I'm going to ask you one last question before I get you over to those guys over there. Mike, my cousins up in Toronto are diehard Dolphins fans. Is there any hope at all in South Beach, or are they just going to be crying for the rest of eternity?
I think there's some hope there. Like I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender in the coming year or so, but they have been building to something. And that's why it was so shocking when Brian Flores was fired, is that they have had winning seasons. They weren't at the playoff level yet, but they were figuring things out here and there. If they just hit on a couple draft picks in the past few years where their offensive line has been so horrendous, if you hit on a couple of those offensive line picks, that completely changes everything. So there are a few holes there that if they're filled, and Miami has the first round pick from San Francisco this year, and they have a ton of money, the most in the NFL for free agency to spend. Mm-hmm. They're in a situation where they could fill those pretty quickly. And I don't know if they're a division contender, but they're a team that absolutely should be in the playoffs and maybe win a round. I don't see them going all that far, but like you said, it is going to come down to how far can Tua take this team, and will he be able to hit that next step? And I haven't seen that to this point.
Oh, that's some big stuff there. That's a big statement to say too, because again, there's also some quarterbacks that are out on the market now. And a lot of teams that the quarterback market this offseason is very hot. Mike Szabo, take it away.
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to ask also, I mean, we talked about how Mike McDaniel coming in now on the backs of 2 consecutive winning seasons from Brian Flores, and then that relationship with him and the rest of the front office and ownership falling out. How much pressure, whether it's internal, external, is there going to be on Mike McDaniels to take what Flores did and to continue that progression and to help Tua continue to develop?
I think there is going to be a fair amount of pressure on him. I don't know if it's necessarily like he only has a year or two to get it done, but Stephen Ross has said very frequently this offseason how much he wants to win and develop a continuous winning culture where it's not just a season, or he wants to build something that is sustainable, where they're collaborative, and that results in not just one but multiple championships down the road. And honestly, from again what I just said, the future isn't Super Bowl right now. There's not like a clear trip to the championship, taking home a Lombardi trophy. That's not they're not capable of that at this point. But I think Stephen Ross is putting that pressure on McDaniel, and I do think he is a decent coach. I had written before they made the hire of all the 7 candidates that they were interviewing. McDaniel was my number 2 on the list. So I have been pretty high on him, and I think he's a decent coach. I just, whether or not they can put all those pieces together. And again, Tua at the quarterback is the most important player on the football field. And if you have a quarterback who is making some of the mistakes that he did last season, or is playing the way he did against Tennessee, that's not going to cut it.
Do you think there's that we see how the Super Bowl is playing out this weekend and what we've seen from the Cincinnati Bengals? Does that potentially inspire somebody like the Miami Dolphins to say, okay, we don't have Super Bowl coming up right away, but then you see the Bengals and what they're doing. They say, hey, maybe we hit on a couple of draft picks. We do this well, we do that well, and we may be closer than we think.
Yeah, it definitely should inspire them. Again, the two of the bigger things there is that one team traded for one of the better quarterbacks in the league right now, a top 10 guy in my mind, and Joe Burrow, who was the number 1 overall pick. So if you can bring in that guy or surround Tua with the weapons, a Jamar Chase, a T. Higgins, like Tyler Boyd would be a pretty solid wide receiver on a lot of teams, being a 1 or a 2, and he's the 3rd guy there. So they have a lot of pieces in these situations where teams that don't have the right quarterback should be looking at that. How are we going to compete with Joe Burrow? How are we going to compete with teams that have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, and their allotment of weapons that haven't seen a first-round pick since 2016, 17? Like these teams are setting the mark for the NFL to come, and teams should be looking at that and saying, this is what we have to do. This is kind of the way it's going to be run in the NFL for the foreseeable future anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely something that, to not only talk about down in the future, but again, stuff with Miami, it's really craziness what's going on there, and it continues. And we'll get to the next question in a moment. JD, do you have anything for Mike Masala?
Just a fun little, what if. Now, there are some weapons on that Miami offense. You've got a running back room with Gaskin and Lindsey, and you got a guy like Duke Johnson who can really catch balls out of the backfield. You've got an above-average tight end in Gesicki, and you have an absolute stud in Waddle at receiver. He's a little on the smaller size in terms of body type, but in Devontae Parker, if he stays healthy, could you see them maybe even using him in a role like Deebo Samuel, a big body guy where you can run him out of the backfield, run a lot of trick plays with him, and have a package like that?
Devontae specifically, I think he will be used in a lot of different ways that we haven't seen him used before. I'm not sure if he quite fits the mold of a guy like Deebo. Obviously, this has really been the first iteration of him, and Cordero Patterson have been like the 2 guys out of the backfield as wide receivers. I don't necessarily think that guy exists on the roster yet. There have been a lot of people who have thought that maybe Jalen Waddle can do that. There have been a lot of people who have said Lynn Bowden, who they had drafted a couple years ago, they thought maybe he could be that guy. I don't think Devontae Parker fills that mold. I don't know if he has the all the tools necessary to play that role in this offense just yet. But I think if he stays healthy, he will play a lot bigger role, and those are the type of things I was talking about. Like those are the type of weapons you want to surround Tua Tagovailoa with, like a big-bodied receiver who can catch the ball in the end zone. They didn't have that last year because Devontae Parker was out. Mike Gesicki isn't the best red zone target because he's not the most physical guy. He's more of a slot receiver. So Devontae Parker would be a huge upside to have him healthy, but I'm not sure if he's filling that Deebo Samuel type role.
Now, the next thing here, as we talk about plenty of, I don't know. You look at the defensive side, Mike, and you say to yourself, well, remember Xavier Howard, he wanted out at one point, and you had brought up early on about how this Miami Dolphins team, they've gone through players like toilet paper, and we go, and the reason why I bring that up is because we go back all the way to when they signed Mike Wallace. We go back to when they had Just trying to figure a few guys out. Mike Pouncey as another one. These big name free agent players that wanted to come down to South Beach, big deal, that maybe this, it can really work out down in Miami. And it was never the case. You got guys that were traded away, draft picks, we're stripping it down all over again. And then, of course, and then you start to really shore up that cornerback room, and you got Xavier Howard. Then you pay Byron Jones to be one of the top paid cornerbacks in the entire NFL. And then this early on this year, you got to hear Xavier Howard kind of plug away at a little bit. Well, I kind of want to be traded, but he eventually got it, took it down a notch. When you say that they've got a lot of funds and stuff like that to spend, the question to you, Mike, is that sure, they can spend a lot of money, but are they going to be around for the long haul? Or is this going to be something that's going to be a 2-year experiment and they're going to strip it down all over again?
Oh, like you said, history kind of shows that that's been the way that they've done things in Miami. The way that their team is built, if Xavier Howard leaves, that is it. That is as far as your team goes defensively right now. Xavier Howard is the lifeblood of your team, the number one cornerback. He's one of the best in the league. And Byron Jones, for as much money as he's been getting paid, hasn't been playing like a number one cornerback since he's come into Miami. As far as getting these guys in for a year or two, there are some names who I think could be around long term. But again, it depends on what type of success you're having. If you're a team that's making it to divisional round games and there's some belief in your quarterback, your head coach and your coordinators, that's when you start getting these guys who say, I want to stay around. In Xavier Howard's situation specifically, he wants to be paid more, and he keeps saying that. And last year they figured that out in the offseason, and eventually he ended his hold-in and decided to come back to camp once he got a little bit of a bump. And then they said that, hey, let's revisit that again next offseason. So that's coming again. Like, Xavier Howard is not a guarantee for this team right now. He should be. They should make sure, especially with all the money that they have, that this guy's locked in and ready to go.
Yeah. And also another one too, my last question to you before we get to Mike Szabo again, is Emmanuel Ogbah, who's really been all over the place within the NFL. And now, again, we kind of say he's maybe found a home. We don't know how it's all going to work out here with the new defensive coordinator. We have no idea what this new defense is going to really hold, what it's going to entail. Does Ogbah have a chance to keep Miami as his home, or is he gone, in the next year or two?
I think he should be back here the beginning of next season, whether it is on a long-term deal or some type of franchise. When I ranked the free agents coming into this offseason, he is my number one guy. Like, you can argue Mike Gesicki's up there as well, but now that you know that McDaniel's coming in and he likes to run his offenses with a little bit more of a blocking style tight end, Emmanuel Ogbah's the clear-cut favorite. Everything he did this year impacted almost every game that he played in, whether it was like having insane pass deflection numbers. His quarterback hit rate was off the charts for him. And what seemed like perhaps like a motor issue earlier in his career, how much he loved football, that seems to have gone away in his last 2 years with Miami. He's been extremely productive, and they should make it a priority that he returns next year.
Yeah, you would think that would be the typical route to go, but you never know down in South Beach. You never know. Mike Szabo, take it away.
Yeah, Mike, just one last question for you. If we talk about the different holes around this Dolphins team, if you're the guy making the decision, what's the one aspect of the team that they really need to improve on this offseason?
It has to be offensive line. It has to be the tackle spots specifically have been the biggest issues. Jesse Davis and Liam Eichenberg, who they drafted last year. Jesse Davis was one of the worst tackles that you have seen play football. Watching 16 games of him was rough. And in the 17th game, they actually replaced him with a free agent, an undrafted free agent, and let Robert Jones play in his light, and got hurt. So Jesse Davis had to come back out. So Miami fans were kind of subjected to that all over again. But they need to go after tackles strong this offseason. PFF graded both of their tackles as 2 of the bottom 3 in the NFL this past season out of 85 guys, I believe it was. They've gone after it over and over. Austin Jackson, they did a few years ago. They need to find somebody, whether it's trading for Andre Dillard from the Eagles or signing a Teron Armstead or going back to the draft again for like the 15th straight year out of for a tackle. They need to do something to shore that up, because your quarterback can only do so much in these systems. And Tua's a guy who does very well getting the ball out quick, but he can't even get it quick enough because of how bad this offensive line has been in Miami. So that is the number one thing that they need to address this offseason. And maybe that comes with a scheme change. Mike McDaniel's going to use more of a wide zone blocking running scheme. That could be something that changes from a man blocking scheme that clearly had some of these guys outmatched this past year. But they need to address this in multiple ways to make sure that their quarterback's put in the best situation. You can actually make a decision. Is this the guy we want to build with for the future or not? And it starts there.
Unbelievable stuff. Now, my last rapid fire thing to you here, and I just actually have it here. We got a chance to see Kyler Murray erase all of his Cardinals content off of his Instagram. He unfollowed them off of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, every single social media platform you could think of. Rapid fire, Mike Masala, for you. Is Tua going to be in Miami next year? And if not, who comes in either via trade or free agent?
I think Tua is playing in 2022. I think that's kind of the way that they built this process. Stephen Ross had there have been reports that he had come out and said they wanted the next coach to be in support of Tua Tagovailoa being the quarterback, and that seems to be what they got, because Mike McDaniel has been nothing but complimentary of him. We saw them on the private jet on his way to Miami, talking and kind of joking around, saying how excited they were to work with each other. He's done that again in multiple interviews since then. But I think Tua is the answer for now at that position. But I don't know how long that leash will actually be.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, last one officially for you, Mike. Who do you got on Sunday, Bengals or Rams?
Man, this is a game where I really would be fine with either team winning in my mind, because there are guys from the Rams I would like to see win a Super Bowl. There's Matt Stafford, there's Aaron Donald. I'm an OBJ guy, so I would like to see OBJ win a Super Bowl. And how exciting would it be for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, all these guys in Cincinnati who have come kind of out of nowhere, a complete turnaround. But in my mind, I do think that the Rams are just too talented. They're experienced. Their defensive front is going to be a severe problem for Cincinnati. Even if, again, we talked about it with Miami a couple minutes ago, you can want to get the ball out as fast as you can, like Cincinnati will likely try. There's only so much you can do blocking Aaron Donald. That guy's a Hall of Famer for sure. So I think I got to go with the Rams this weekend.
Okay, so now we've got the only one that went Cincinnati is Mike Zabo down there, because he's a big New York Giants legend BJ Hill fan. He's a BJ Hill fan. No, not actually. Mike,
we're a big Eli Apple fan over
that is true. You see, that is true. That he's and Mike, just to let you know, on this show, when we say legends, they're usually the worst players to ever exist. So that's
I'm a big fan of those guys. I love thinking about the most random quarterbacks, like Cleo Lemon. Before I started being a huge Dolphins guy, that was my go-to for any time anybody asked about a random quarterback. It was Cleo Lemon was the guy every time. I think he started 2 games in his entire career.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? Now that means, and Mike Zabo is witness, that means, Mike, you are 100% welcome back here, and you would get along with our other co-hosts in Ian Schraier and Rob DeLuca. There is no doubt about it. But ladies and gentlemen, Mike Masala, managing editor of the Dolphins Wire, which is part of USA Today's SMG group. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here tonight and spending a part of your Friday night with us. We really appreciate it, and enjoy Super Bowl 56 on Sunday, sir.
Absolutely. You guys as well. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Absolutely, man. We'd love to have you back on in the future. And have a good night, okay?
You as well.
All right, man. Thank you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, of course, with that, it's been, there we go. We got to get that on there. All good stuff. And also, JD, we cannot thank you enough for coming on here as well.
It's been a pleasure. The only thing I love nearly as much as talking about wrestling is talking about football. So it's been a great time with you guys all the times that I've been on.
Absolutely, JD. Thank you for coming on as well, and we will see you soon. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out the Essential Wrestling Podcast every Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe to them on the following platforms, of course: Google, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and of course, Apple Podcasts. And if you want to see all of their gorgeous faces, be sure to search The Eastern Observer on YouTube. So all good things there. Tuesday night, February 15th, 5 p.m. Eastern time, right here on the Eastern Observer. JD, good seeing you, sir. Thank you so much, and we will see you at some point soon. And good luck this Sunday as well in the Survivor Pool.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me again.
All right. So, Mike, it is just you and me, and it's, I gotta say, it's fun. It's fun now. Now it's you and I just shooting the stuff. And this is the first time that you and I are on here going head to head. This is pretty cool. This is good.
This is true. This will be like one of our therapy sessions that we have before our game days when we're covering the games.
That is 100% true. And you and I, we've had a lot of those therapy sessions. There's no doubt. And it's very funny because it's a perfect segue. And I see how you went right into that segue there, just like Rob DeLuca. So he would be very proud of you there. So of course, St. John's UConn, that comes your way on Sunday, but of course, Seton Hall, Villanova, that's a big deal tomorrow as well. But I want to start off with our primary focus, and of course, New York's team in St. John's, and my alma mater and Mike's current university. St. John's is playing number 17 UConn, Mike, on Sunday, Madison Square Garden. It's a big deal. Why? Because the season's over anyway, but it would be a little bit of a boost if they can at least put up a fight. In basically what it comes down to is that St. John's can't really get, they will not get an at-large. There's no doubt about that. Regardless, they could win all of the games all the way until the rest of the season. It's not going to happen. But what could happen here if they can potentially show up on Sunday in a nationally televised game?
They'll show their fans, they'll show whoever's watching nationally televised that they do have some fight in them, that there is some growth, and they can be able to build some momentum to the Big East tournament. The only thing that could salvage anything this season is if you do make some sort of run down the stretch and win a game or two in the Big East tournament. Again, I constantly always hear it in Twitter how St. John's hasn't even made the Big East tournament semifinals since the year I was born, let alone win one. But, in a year where it's gone really wrong, if you could even make some sort of a run like that, why not? And why not? Georgetown was absolutely god-awful last year, and they won the whole thing, albeit without fans in Madison Square Garden and whatnot. But they still 4 wins in 4 days. Nobody thought, they were the worst, one of the worst power conference teams last year, and they made a run all the way. So, could St. John's win 2 games, maybe building in the Big East tournament? We'll see what they can show over the next month or so. But that's really what you can see from them if they do win this game against UConn. But injuries are a big deal. There's no updates yet on Posh Alexander and Julian Champagny. Posh looks like took a really bad ankle sprain. He's had a boot. We've seen him with the boot on, so that doesn't really look good. That really looks like a few weeks absence, which obviously really does not help. Julian Champagny, of course, took that really hard fall on the ground, Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. So we're not sure if there's any sort of back issues there. I don't know if it did affect him the rest of the game. We saw him go back to the locker room before the second half started. Then he came back out and played most of the second half. So We'll see what goes there. If one of them or even both are, if both are out, I mean, I won't be an optimist and all. If both are out, I don't see how they win on Sunday. If Julian Champagne's there, I think they do have a shot. I mean, they were probably a minute or so away from beating Villanova and coming up with an incredible comeback out of nowhere. They just decided to actually start putting together some great offensive possessions in the last 5 minutes. I don't know where they were in the second half, but if you play similarly to how you played down that stretch against Villanova, they might have a shot against UConn on Sunday.
Yeah, but this is something else too. We have to look at what happened. And there was a player that you didn't mention in Aaron Wheeler. 31 points. That man was a beast. And you have to realize is that if you ever look at what Aaron Wheeler, first off at his height, the way his jump shot is, it is nearly identical to Julian Champagnie. The other difference is that he's just a tiny bit lankier than Julian.
His arms come up higher.
His wingspan is definitely wider. There's no doubt.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, Tuesday night. I mean, what more you can say? It's so insane the splits of his non-conference to his to conference play. I mean, the player that he's become ever since the calendar turned to conference play is fantastic. I mean, in a season that has not gone according to plan for St. John's, he's been a massive bright spot ever since the calendar turned to 2022. He's averaging, I think it's up to 12, 13 points a game in conference play. The average really ticked up with the Tuesday night's performance, and that was absolutely sensational. 31 points, just carrying that St. John's offense. It almost happened late, but it didn't. He probably should have had the last shot. Unfortunately, it went in and out and just stomped my heart on the ground for a second there. But that was in such an incredible performance. And in non-conference play, he barely averaged 5 points a game, and then he's turned into this. I mean,
he barely averaged 10 minutes. That's the sad part. He barely averaged 10 minutes.
He was benched against Monmouth because he wasn't doing as much in early December. So, and then all of a sudden he's pulling out these sort of performances against ranked opponents. And it's just fascinating to see. I mean, but that's as much as it's praise on St. John's and Aaron Wheeler for how good he's doing, it's also a bit of a knock in that you look at all the transfers that were brought in, and you could really only say definitively that that was the one guy you hit on in Aaron Wheeler, and what you're seeing in him. And in 2 months, you're not going to have him on the team. He's going to graduate. So, that was the lone bright spot. But they have to be able to hit on going forward. They have to be able to hit on more of their transfers because they're going to have a bunch this offseason. So with all the guys, most of the guys that they brought in were graduate students or seniors anyway. So they're going to have to replace a lot of those guys, one of them being Wheeler. So they're going to have to hit on more guys than just Wheeler. Although Joel Soriano has been solid the last couple of weeks, he took a huge step back on Tuesday night against Villanova, but he's been doing solidly. But Aaron Wheeler's that one guy. It's like, man, wow. Like he's just been sensational.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, and then looking at with what happened with St. John's and UConn in the last game, with Julian Champagnie basically put the lights on in the second half, and he carried the team on his back. And obviously with, I think it was 4.8 seconds to go inside Gamble Pavilion, I was there alongside our good friend Kevin Connolly, and both of our jaws dropped. It was some wild stuff that we got a chance to see. And then because of foul trouble, obviously, then we got a chance to see, of course, St. John's go completely down the tubes in overtime when St. John's did tie the ball game up, and UConn would go on a 10-0 run to eventually come away with the victory up there. But it was a really good showing with Gamble, and I would not be surprised if we see something like that because UConn, Mike, in the last few games, they've been struggling a little bit. Yes, they've come away with a few victories, but they've been struggling. They have not been the UConn of recent memory. And when I say recent memory, obviously last year with James Bouknight, but if James Bouknight's not there, they're a completely different team, and it's showing this season as well.
I think they have games where UConn's ever since we've seen them come back to the Big East, they have games here and there where they they underperform expectations. They go through a bit of a rough patch.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes the scoring is in and out just because some of the guys are inexperienced, or they get into a big defensive battle and then they just don't have. They're good as a unit, but they just don't have. Sometimes when you're in those really tough defensive battles, maybe the individual brilliance in that certain moment, then eventually they overcome it and become a better team, I guess, out of that adversity. But maybe like how St. John's had almost caught Villanova, maybe you catch UConn on a bad day, and that sort of stuff. That's what I see there. I think they're two teams. They play ever since St. John's and UConn. UConn came back to the Big East. These have been relatively even games. It's not like one team's blowing out one another or not. Last year, St. John's came away with the big upset. This year, the game was pretty much up in stores a couple weeks ago that you mentioned. The game was pretty close all the way through, and then you went into overtime, and then St. John's completely fell apart. I think the biggest part going into this game, and I think we constantly say about the last couple of games, is the offensive execution is really lacking. I mean, just since it's UConn that they're facing on Sunday, just going back to that game in stores, if they would have executed their offense a lot better, they could have easily won that game. You think about the amount of missed layups that they failed on in that game, the lack of execution in the paint really eventually hurt them. They lost that game. And that same fact of their lack of execution and their ability to score in the paint, they've missed some easy layups here and there. It's showed up in many different games throughout the season, and it showed up on Tuesday night. They missed a lot of simple layups. They missed a lot of stuff around the paint, and that comes back to bite you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then against the team like UConn, that, you go up against an Adama Sanogo, you go up against a Tyrese Martin, you go up against an RJ Cole, in Isaiah Whaley, who's really been struggling lately, is the aforementioned Whaley. And of course, Tyler Polley as well. He's another one who, he gets significant time off the bench, but he's also, really good for about, three open J's, which, equates to about 6-7 points a game. And right now against Xavier, he's only played for a few minutes, 0 for 1 from downtown, one steal. And that's been pretty much his entire night. But for right now, Xavier's beating UConn 54-46 out in Cincinnati. So that's another big deal too, because Xavier was pummeled against Seton Hall on Wednesday night. I was at that game down at the Prudential Center. And that's another one too. Again, UConn is another team that is very inconsistent, and it's very evident too. They just lost to Creighton as well by a few, and then they also lost to Villanova. They didn't even show up in that contest. And Villanova was just lighting it up as, their usual selves. That's just how they do. And then against Marquette, then Marquette started to make a run, and then UConn really they laid their foot down on the gas. Now, Mike, for you, with this St. John's and UConn battle, we have to realize also this is the first time with fans that UConn will be playing in a University of Connecticut Huskies uniform in the Big East in nearly 9 years. That's a big deal with fans in the building. Yeah,
I mean, first time with fans in the building and facing St. John's for the first time in the Garden since they came back to the Big East. I mean, it's pretty significant. Should provide for an interesting environment. Tuesday night was a pretty interesting environment there, especially late on when St. John's tried to make their run. It was pretty solid environment there in the Garden.
And the student section showed out. I have to tell you, they showed up.
Should be the case on Sunday as well. I've heard their efforts to try and get people out there, as there should be.
Super Bowl Sunday will be hard for sure.
It will be, but the hope is it's earlier in the afternoon, so you hope you can get some people out there, especially the students. But it should be, all the tradition of the rivalry, first time back with fans in the Garden since, UConn's been in the Big East, should provide for an interesting environment. And I'll leave with one more thought. I mean, for St. John's, they need this game in the sense, like, not that they're going anywhere in the NCAA tournament or anything like that, but they need to show something out of this year. This season hasn't gone according to plan, but you have to show some life. I mean, if this team continues to lose or whatever, or lose a majority of their games for the next couple of months, it's even more of a gut punch after a gut punch. Need something to show the fans that there's some life within this team. They can win some of those games. They've shown more often than not that they can give a good team a really good game, but not be able to get over the hump. They need to show some life, and I think there's huge pressure on Mike Anderson in this next month or so to really show some life from this team going into the Big East tournament and to have a good run. There's a lot of anger surrounding him, some rightfully so and whatnot. He's got to show something about this team going into the Big East tournament. There's got to be some signs of progression, some signs of life to build for the March tournament.
But the question to you now is that, yes, there needs to be sign of life. There needs to be something, but he had just gotten an extension not too long ago.
Well, he's not going anywhere. I know that conversation is always there, but he's not going anywhere. He's been signed to an extension. Unless me and you, Joey, can start a fund for millions of dollars, I mean, it's not happening. The extension, maybe you could say in hindsight, was early, but a little bit too early. But hindsight is 2020. I mean, it was at the time. Yeah, you weren't like totally, oh my God, this is a bad decision at the time. Back then, you thought, okay, they're headed on the right direction. They were just a win away from the tournament, all that sort of stuff. Now, of course, as I said, hindsight is 2020. A year on, it's a lot more of a different story, and 10 out of 10 Red Storm fans would not give that extension now. But he's been extended. He's probably at least got another year or two, and will have some pressure to start to getting to the tournament and getting this team into the tournament, because this was supposed to be the year where, you know, this was your team completely. All of Chris Mullen's old guys had transferred out. It's completely his team that's he's recruited, either transfer or high school. It's his team completely, his system fully, what he wants to implement.
Yeah,
you were returning two all-conference players in Julian Champagny, Posh Alexander, just coming off of a fantastic freshman year, defensive player of the year. And it's a terrible look when you fall in this far off. I mean, everybody expected it to be the year. We've talked about it. Other polls had them high. All the rest of the coaches in the
coaches poll had him fourth.
Yes, so they were highly regarded around the league, and they've fallen this far. So there's certainly pressure on him, but he's not going anywhere. There's just pressure in the sense that they need to show signs of life in this team, reasons for the fans to show up, and to build some momentum for March. Yeah,
really difficult to see what's going to happen down there over in Queens. But now, Mike, just to go over the Hudson River and go to Seton Hall for a quick moment. And of course, they're going to be playing Villanova tomorrow, and we got a chance to see, of course, Villanova playing at not 100%, not 100% speed with Justin Moore and Colin Gillespie. Those two were game time decisions. But then, as our good friend Kevin Connolly kind of pressured Jay Wright in the press conference, which I give him a lot of credit for. He kind of pretty much said to him, he's like, so you pretty much bluffed. And he was like, well, it was a game time decision, and I didn't think these guys could go, but he reassured and doubled down that he didn't think that they could go. They were game time decisions, and he was really proud of how they came out. Probably because he knew the whole time that they were just going to see if St. John's would potentially game plan around the other guys. But keep in mind, though, is that Villanova in the last, I think it was 3 or 4 minutes, Mike, they turned the ball over 8 times. 8 times. And St. John's nearly executed on all of them. And now they're going to be playing Seton Hall, which, again, we've gotten a chance to see Seton Hall. They've finally gotten out of January blues. They're in February fun mode.
Well, the interesting thing is going to be, what's the health after a couple of days of Gillespie and Moore, now that you've had even more days off to recover?
Yeah.
Because clearly not only, I mean, Villanova, I mean, they were on that was not the Villanova that we all know.
Oh yeah.
On Tuesday night. I mean, St. John's had the game plan was going all well. Then they
didn't hit any triples in that game either.
Yeah, and they really didn't. They really weren't at 100%. They really needed guys like Brandon Slater to step up. Eric Dixon was phenomenal in Tuesday night's game, but you think the way St. John's were playing them, they're able to hold Gillespie, able to hold more. I mean, Seton Hall may capitalize a lot more, especially offensively. If Villanova plays that same way, they'll capitalize more offensively than St. John's did. And the question is, what will be the help of Gillespie and Moore? Because those two guys, they make up for 60% of Villanova's scoring. They're really the engines. Not that, oh my God, they're so bad without them, but they struggle a bit. They need those guys to play a lot better than what they did on Tuesday night, and give them some more impactful minutes. Although I think it did go pretty underrated that Colin Gillespie did have 10 rebounds despite being scoreless, and I thought late on made some pretty big defensive rebounds. Couple of offensive ones, too, that led to some key points for the Wildcats late on. So that, I think, goes underrated. But I think for Seton Hall, I think the interesting thing is to continue to see what this team is like without Bryce Aiken. There's so much of a different team without Bryce Aiken. And at times it's been really bad without him. But I think over the last couple of weeks, Kadari Richmond has started to stabilize. He's really started to grow as a point guard and learn to be able to take care of the basketball a lot more. The turnovers are cutting down a bit. He's looking a lot more polished than he was a couple of weeks ago. So that's obviously something to build on. Jared Roden getting back to more to his best. Jameer Harris has presented himself as a great perimeter threat as well at times. And Iko Biagu is getting back to what we all know him to be after struggling a couple of games here and there. So it's interesting to see, can Richmond continue his progression and fill in well for Bryce Aiken, as well as Miles Kalen there filling in here and there, which I am surprised that Kevin will, just to go on a side note, I am surprised in the first couple of weeks that Miles Kale wasn't on the ball more in the first couple of games after Aiken was injured, because I thought that was interesting. Richmond was never really a guy who ran the point, although limited minutes in Syracuse or whatnot. Not really his typical thing to do. More off the ball, kind of a shooter here and there, can be a shooter. I always thought Kale, being the more experienced, would have been more on the ball, but Willard went with Richmond. He stuck with Richmond. It's had some rough patches, and it's developed over time, and where he's becoming solid. But interesting to see what happens there. But you kind of feel like Seton Hall need to start getting these sort of games, like if they want to really build out a really good resume and solidify themselves. They're in, of course, in the tournament for now, but they just need that, like a win against the Villanova. They need those sort of one or two more wins to really solidify it.
Yeah, and not only that too, I think they, right now they're playing for seeding as well, and they're trying to get, out of that dreaded 8-9 game that they've been plagued in playing the last couple of years that they've made it, 2019, 2018 as well. They've been both the 9 and 8 seed respectively, so that's really tough for them. But of course, in the game against Xavier, though, we got a chance to see, of course, the last 3.7 seconds take about a grand total of 15 minutes, which was a ton of fun, of course, for the ones that had to drive about 45 miles back home. But, all joking aside, though, what we got a chance to see with Xavier, though, was that Travis Steele and this entire roster is not the team that they really were thought to be. And Seton Hall completely exploited everything that they had. The only difference was that down low in the paint, you know, in the painted area, Xavier was really hammering it down. But again, when Mike, what you brought up with Jared Rhoden, though, 25 points, 8 boards, and then you look at what Kadari Richmond was able to do as well. He was a solid ball handler as well. But then you also look at the supplementary guys as well. Tyrese Samuel, Trey Jackson as well. Jameer Harris is another one.
Has been phenomenal this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these guys are really stepping up. They're showing the depth that they have. They continue to hit a complete pothole and a what's the better word? They continue to just hit a brick wall. That's better. Yeah. They continue to hit a brick wall in the month of January. They lost to St. John's. They lost to DePaul. They lost to Marquette. 2 out of those 3 were on the road. Obviously the St. John's game in January 24th, I believe it was, or 24th, that Monday. That was the Walsh Gymnasium game where they were completely blown out. Mike, you were there. Yeah. And that was when Kadari Richmond was completely he was exposed. That's what he was completely exposed. And St. John's took full advantage of them and him as well. And there was no game plan. But here, I think against a Villanova tomorrow down in their building, the Wells Fargo Center, I think what we're going to see a lot of Villanova threes. And I don't think the paint is going to be the primary game plan for Jay Wright tomorrow, because I don't think he wants to deal with the Ike Obiagu. I don't think that's going to be his game plan for sure. And he's going to want to stop Kadari Richmond. That's going to be the start too.
Well, even though Eric Dixon has really been coming along.
Yeah,
I don't think you want to contend with Ike Obiagu, as you said. I don't think you want to play that matchup. But as we know, Jay Wright always has a plan. He'll probably go smaller so that it forces Willard not to play Obiagu as much, and you'll have to play Tyrese Samuel a little more, who's still a problem to deal with, but maybe
Alexis Yetna now.
Yeah, maybe you can be able to scheme against that a little better. Going back to Xavier, I always think I go back to our good friend Chris Bowell, and he always says there's always a degree of underperformance when it comes to Travis Steele's team. And you always look to a game that they had against Seton Hall. You look to those type of games, and it always just seems like those type of games they always come up short in. And it's like they're supposed to be this kind of team, and then you point to that one game, and it's like, they start coming down to earth a bit. That's always what it seems like, regardless of personnel or whatnot. That's what it seems to be like with Xavier over the past couple of years. They just can't be that team that this juggernaut and start really rising up in those conference standings, because they always have that 1 or 2 speed bumps that really crush them, and they underperform and don't hit the highs that they potentially can. Zach Fremantle basically being a non-factor for most of that game didn't help at all. And yet they were still in the game for a lot of it, which speaks to the depth and performance of a lot of the players that they have. Because a year or 2 prior, Fremantle not being that much of a factor, you're being blown out 10, 15 points.
And also right
in there.
Yeah, and also, Mike, something else too with Zach Fremantle too. He was also thrown out of he wasn't thrown out, but he was given a couple of fouls that eventually gave him 5 fouls. But the big thing was he was assessed a foul against Trey Jackson because he hopped over Ike Obiagu. Didn't really get it was on an offensive play. He hopped over Ike Obiagu, and then nearly punches were almost thrown on the court. Pat Driscoll had to, who's the lead official, had to calm things down. Tim Clardy was there as well. They had to calm things down, and the bottom line was that they eventually gave Trey Jackson a technical. They also gave Zach Fremantle a technical, but then they also assessed a foul on basically him not on Fremantle, not allowing Obiagu to get up. And that was a big deal for a lot of the Seton Hall guys, because a lot of his frustration kind of came out on that little hop over, which eventually took Fremantle out of the game. But it didn't matter because Jack Nungy was really the catalyst in that contest to get Xavier within 2, but it simply was not enough. Mike, let's keep moving on here. We got a couple more minutes. This is another one. And you know me, I love salary cap numbers and crunching these numbers. And the Vegas Golden Knights, they've got some problems here. And now, of course, we are hearing a little bit of what they might do. And it sounds awfully familiar. And now it's going to happen on the West Coast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for all of those fans out there that despise the Vegas Golden Knights, they thought maybe that Kelly McCrimmon and the entire Vegas Golden Knights organization might have had to unload some money. They need $10 million to get off the books in order to have Jack Eichel return from the injured reserve. Well, funny story, ladies and gentlemen. Do we remember what happened with the Tampa Bay Lightning when they had to put Nikita Kucherov on the long-term injured reserve? Yes, we do. Well, guess what? It's happening. And Mark Stone is going to be heading to the injured reserve, long-term IR, and most likely his regular season is done. But do we expect him to return for the playoffs? Most likely. They say no. He'll be back. There's no doubt about it, which means most likely that there still might have to be a minor move. There's no doubt, because in addition to Jack Eichel, they still have to get Alec Martinez back. That's a big deal, Mike. Again, they haven't changed this rule. It's, in my opinion, a disgrace still. I would have loved to see the money being moved.
Yeah, because you see teams that really just manipulate the whole injured reserve situation and all to be able to squeeze these guys in there and all. And I mean, it's pretty obvious in what's going on. So I agree with you there, but it would be interesting if they had to move some money. Maybe a Riley Smith you're talking about moving around, trying to move around the cap. But, this was the situation that Vegas wanted to put themselves in when they got Eichel. They knew this was coming, and they probably have a plan on what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, when you see certain things like that, it just kind of just says, you got a chance to see what happened with Nate Schmidt when you sign when you sign all of these guys to big money deals, and then you kind of just, turn your back on these players and you ship them out because there's a brand new prize that you can just sign for however much, and there'll be no whatever, and a team will want them. But it's a lack of trust. And now they're able to utilize which is unfortunate for Mark Stone because he can't finish out the regular season. But I think he would rather do that and probably take the rest, if you will, and eventually get back to it. And he dons the C for that reason. So, there's most likely a good reason behind all of this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Stone had a little hand in it and said, yeah, put me on the long-term injured reserve just so we've got, we'll figure it out. And I think that's where it went from all the way from the top to bottom. This was a well thought out process. And kudos to Kelly McCrimmon and the entire league for continuing to exploit this rule that is now going to potentially put the Vegas Golden Knights in front as the Western Conference champions right now. And I'll give them that. But again, that's on paper. We don't know what's going to happen.
The avalanche right there. So
yeah, exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude our portion of the show. Let us get you our kudos. You know what? I'll start off with this one. Ladies and gentlemen, my kudos, of course, my good friend Anthony Iapoce was named Boston Red Sox senior hitting coordinator after getting let go by the Chicago Cubs as the major league hitting coach. So I'm really glad to see that he's back out on his feet up in Beantown. And the best part about it is that he is close to home to his 3 children and his wife, Susan, which is really phenomenal stuff. So that's really good stuff there. Kudos to you, Anthony, to Suzanne, the entire family. Really happy for you. And I can't say this. I can never say go Sox, but I hope that you develop solid talent and eventually take your talents elsewhere. And then I can root for you. Mike Szabo, your kudos.
I will disappoint you tonight, and I have absolutely nothing. I just give kudos to both the Rams and Bengals. Hope good luck to them, and hope we have a great Super Bowl this weekend.
Well, that works. That works too. Ladies and gentlemen, let's, of course, get you a couple of things here. Be sure to subscribe to us by searching the Primetime Rundown at the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey. And of course, if you would like to see all of our beautiful faces every single week, be sure to search the Eastern Observer on YouTube. And of course, be sure to search the Essential Wrestling Podcast. You got a chance to see early on John DeConnie, one of the hosts, every Tuesday night starting at 5 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. Be sure to subscribe to their podcast at the following platforms for on demand: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and of course, if you would like to see their faces as well, search the Eastern Observer on YouTube. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for us here on the Primetime Rundown. For Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, who were both on assignment tonight, Mike Zabo, of course, thank you so much for co-hosting with me tonight. It's been a ton of fun. I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us here at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we will see you next Friday night, February 18th, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen.